Hey everyone, you made it to our show, Oak Road Diaries. It's a podcast where we get to take a journey into the lives of different experts and we get to explore their roots and their own self-care practices.
In each episode, we dive deep into their personal philosophies, daily rituals, and transformative experiences from their lives, which offer all of us valuable insights and practical tips for our own well-being.
Join us as we uncover the wisdom behind intentional living, one story at a time.
This month, we're so honored to sit down with Alana Mooi, who's a storyteller, a holistic guide, and a vital voice within Nana and Farmer's Footprint. Her work sits at the intersection of spirituality, cultural identity, and food systems, showing all of us that the ways that we eat, gather, and grow our food, they truly shape not just our health, but the health of our communities and the planet.
In this conversation, Alana dives into how reconnecting with food traditions and practices, intentional eating can nourish the body, mind, and soul. We explore how indigenous practices inform modern solutions in regenerative agriculture, how sustainable farming can restore ecosystems, and how storytelling bridges the gap between the farmers, the consumers, and community well-being. Together, we reflect on the profound role of cultural heritage in shaping dietary choices, family gatherings, and shared rituals, highlighting the ways that spirituality and food connect us to something larger than ourselves.
Alana also shares practical insights on mindful eating, food awareness, and building supportive communities around nourishment. We discuss the journey of regenerative agriculture, the importance of progress over perfection and dietary changes, and how small intentional actions around food can ripple into broader ecological and social impact. This episode's so rich with wisdom on sustainability, food access, community connection, and the power of slowing down to honor what we eat and how we live.
Whether you're passionate about regenerative farming, intentional living, cultural food traditions, or building a life in alignment with nature's rhythms, this conversation is a deep, heart-centered exploration that will leave you inspired to reconnect with your own practices. So settle in, breathe, and join us as we explore the stories, rituals, and insights of Alana Mooi of Nana and Farmer's Footprint, discovering how intentional eating, community, and regenerative practices can transform not just our plates, but our lives, our relationships, and yes, our world. Thank you, Alana. Taking time out of your day and just to be on our show, just to describe who you are, what your purpose is, and really just to help people understand the nature of their food. I mean, that's kind of the goal of this discussion today, is just to kind of understand who is Alana, what is your role in the world that you chose to take on, and kind of go from there. I know we kind of got into your history a little bit, but we can kind of backtrack and kind of get the ball rolling.
I mean, honestly, it's what we've been talking about is what the podcast is all about. It's just a raw conversation, right? I mean, it's trying to understand people. Oak Road Diaries, I'll just kind of explain it, assuming maybe you don't have any background, but my brother and I, we're brothers, by the way. We
can't tell at all. Maybe if I get the glasses, then you can tell. Hey guys.
We grew up on a road. It was called Oak Road, right, in Pennsylvania. And so when we kind of thought of this concept, you mix that with the happy atrium, which again is really the whole idea and the whole concept is we're trying to gather different tools and different learnings from people all around the world that are applying that are these tools that are helping them to really become more intentional with their life. I mean, they're not gonna be perfect, right? But I feel like a lot of us, we really felt very strongly like we were ourselves, and just people around us are just very kind of default in how they're living, day in and day out, and maybe not being as intentional as they want to be, as is proven by, and we'll get to this later, but the food system alone is massively default, right? And so obviously there are a lot of people like Farmer's Footprint and other organizations that are trying to disrupt the status quo to show like, hey, listen, like we need to be more intentional. And if we do this, more people, it's consumer demand, largely driven by that. And if we can do this and if we can drive that demand, then it'll make a lot more economic sense for these organizations and these farmers. So that's just one. So Sam and I, we thought about it. We're like, hey, we've got these people we ourselves are trying to live a more intentional life. we came up with what's called 7 pillars of transformation. And so with the 7 pillars, again, the world that you're living in, there's this obviously massive mixture of physical, right, with like what we eat, what we consume, put into our body. But I'll kind of piggyback on that and also say, yeah, I think there's a spiritual aspect as well, because people don't realize how spiritually connected we are to our foods. And I think that's largely why we have been blinded. There's this mask that's kind of, I would say, this fog, right? The large food system has really put this fog over us with how we're consuming food, the kind of food that we're consuming, and the quantity. And so I just think that, and I only know this from experience because I kind of went through my own journey that we can get into if it makes sense. But I realized, I was vegan for almost a decade. It was that really helped kind of lift the fog and help me see that there's really this spiritual connection with food. So those are just the 2 pillars, but I'm sure as we get more into it, you'll see. So that's a little bit more of a long-winded background, but I wanted to make sure you kind of understood what we were about. So you can direct your thoughts on that. But really, it's just, yeah, let's understand you. We talked about you from Mexico City. Love to hear your journey. Let's just kind of backtrack a bit.
Yeah, who was Alana as a child? Whatever you're
All the way
comfortable,
back.
I want to, yeah, whatever you're comfortable with providing us, right? Some people, they have to, worry about their privacy and things like that. So whatever you're comfortable with, just be vulnerable as much as you want to be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me into the space. Um, really resonate with the values and energy that's driving your like motivation to come together and create the space. Super needed. So thank you for having me, first of all. I'm a pretty open book, so like just ask away, and I'm happy to answer as much of your questions as I can.
Well, I got a
Yeah.
first question. What is growing up in Mexico like as Americans? Call it propaganda, call it whatever it is. I mean, what is, again, knowing nothing, right? What is Mexico City like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting place. I think kind of taking it back to what we were briefly getting into at the beginning, there's like the Spanish colonized very differently than the English. So Mexico as a country, and I think this is true to most of Latin America, is very mixed. Like most Mexicans are a mix of Spanish and indigenous. And I think that in itself creates a very unique relationship both within ourselves and as a society, because you have like um a lot of indigenous tradition that is very present in the day to day. In the context of food and agriculture, we see this at the markets a lot. The way that people are in relationship with their food is a lot of the times very direct. And especially, this might be a little further removed in the city, but the more that you get out of the city and into other areas of the country, more rural areas, or even just smaller cities, there's still a very direct connection to seasonal produce, tradition around food, families gathering to share a meal, people being in the kitchen. So that, I think, is something that since I was born was very integrated into my life, and I didn't even think to appreciate it. Like, it was just the way it was, and the way it was for most people.
So would you say that even as a child, you were living in that default? In this regard, it was a positive default way, right? Because
Cultural,
you
yeah.
were connected naturally with the spirit and the community of the food.
Latin America
Totally.
is, yeah, it's such a connection. Go ahead, Alani. Expand.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, growing up, a memory that feels very present to this day was the evolution of tortillas. Like, I mentioned my nana earlier in the conversation. Like, when I was very, very little, we would walk together, whether to the market or somewhere. Like, we would just, and whenever we would walk past a tortilleria, which is like these places that make tortillas, and they just, the whole street smells like fresh, warm tortillas. She would ask for one and put a little bit of salt and just hand it over to me. And I remember as I as I was growing up, then suddenly started seeing like the maseca advertising, which is like mimsa, which is industrialized corn, like corn that is not nixtamalized anymore, which is this like very similar to a fermentation process that happens traditionally in Mexico. That's like a combination of ash and like boiling the water that just makes it more bioavailable. But I remember noticing growing up, just like, oh, what's this? Like, what's this new thing? And suddenly, like when I was a teenager, then I noticed that the tortillas started breaking, like when we ate them. So
Huh.
since early on, it was this like,
You saw a shift in the type and how your food was being made.
It was the raw
mhm,
Is what you're
ingredients,
and
saying.
right? And the raw
yeah,
ingredient,
Yeah.
right? It was in the masa. It was in the because it's corn tortilla she's referring to,
yeah,
and it was the
it's
masa
corn
itself.
tortilla,
Yeah,
Mhm.
which is like the foundation of the
Right.
Mexican
yeah,
diet. Like most people will have multiple tortillas with each meal. So having such
100%.
a like substantial part of our diet changed so drastically within my own lifetime, um, definitely would like intrigued me from a very early age.
What because of, again, not knowing what caused that shift with that, right? Especially if the people are um I guess connected to the food. Maybe they're just like anyone else though, right? Not everybody's connected as much in Mexico City to the food.
What was
I'm
it?
sure, convenience comes into play and that stuff,
Population,
right?
I
So
think,
is
is the
it
same thing. If they're piggybacking
yeah,
on like the U.S., I mean, the U.S. like
okay.
what they did with wheat and dwarf wheat is because population. How are we going to
Yeah,
feed all these
that's what I
people?
assumed. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting that you ask that because the timeline maps out like
Right in
very
hand with it. Yeah.
right in hand. So like at the end of the 1980s, beginning of the 1990s, Mexico signs the free trade agreement with the US and Canada. And that to this day, now that you know Mexico and North America is very active around conversations related to GMO corn and whether Mexico accepts that or not. But we started seeing with the signing of the free trade agreement a lot more a lot a lot more industrialized food products just being available in Mexico. And with corn specifically, this like mass influx of corn flour that no longer went through the traditional process of that used to be very like regionalized, and people, they would purchase the corn, they would go through the nixtamalization process, and it would all get processed in each tortilleria. And then right after the signing of the free trade agreement, with these like big companies started to offer the infrastructure for the tortillerias for free as long as they incorporated their flour, their corn
Interesting.
flour.
Wow. So of course
Yeah,
these smaller shops were like, heck yeah,
yeah,
I'll
it was cheaper for
capitalize on
them.
this, more money, it's cheaper, whatever. I'm getting
They
these
got
bigger
they got
companies
the
helping me.
facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So how did that affect? So let's backtrack. So you're a teenager and you're noticing. You're probably not thinking much about it, but you're just like, man, this quality isn't as good, right? So what did that do? Like, walk us. I mean, you've had time to think back on this, I'm sure, at this point. But like, were you very cognizant at that moment when as a teenager, like, okay, something's going on here. I'm about to go figure this out with food. Like, what's happening right now? Like, this is going to be my mission.
Um, so I had a bit of an interesting journey. So I've always, as I said, like I grew up in the kitchen. My on both sides, like my grandmas, my aunts, they, my on my dad's side, my grandma had a cafeteria and they did like catering for weddings and big events. So we were always just like around the kitchen, all of us. We were helping out, but and in the context of the tortillas, like I noticed this shift. I noticed, and again, growing up, it was always around flavor. Like that's what we, that's what we valued. That's what we
Food is life. Yeah.
prioritized.
Yeah.
Yeah, the celebration too, like
Sure.
big community, big family. But I never considered it a professional path growing up, which led me to choose. I started political science and legal studies right after high school, and so at that moment, law and policy felt like like a strong vehicle in pursuit of change and justice. Um, so then towards the end of my career, I specialized in sustainable development law, public international law, and I did this in a university in France. So a lot of the work that I was doing there was working really closely with immigrant communities to make suggestions to immigration policies and ways that they could incorporate immigrant workforce in a way that
Fascinating.
contributed to the economy, so that they weren't seen as this like big burden or weight, but really more like, oh, we're receiving all this resource. How can we incorporate it into um, the economy of the country?
Sure. Did you see the outcome of that, or were you just in the process of doing it?
That was I was in the process. I was very much in the process, and that was it was frustrating. Like being in the process itself felt very clunky. A lot of my professors that had been in this space for like 30, 40 years, super respected. Some of them had been really involved in the Paris Agreement at the time. And just seeing the way that like fell through when it did, and how far removed we were as practitioners from the people itself that we were like designing these proposals for. It just felt like a huge disconnect. You know, as a student, like fresh out of university, I had all the energy
Of course, yeah.
to want to like go to the border and like interview people.
I'm gonna make a change kind of thing.
Yeah, totally, totally. And
Yeah,
like, let's go, let's roll up our
that's right.
sleeves, let's interview the people, let's see what they need. Then I came back to Mexico, and we started like working with similar frameworks that we were working in France at the time, but more focused on Mexican immigrant communities. And a lot of those communities are agricultural communities. So that was kind of my way into agriculture.
And
That
what age was this at about?
I was like 20, 22, 23,
Me too. That's a
something like
good
that.
impactful. I mean, think about up here at 22 years old, a lot of kids are still out partying and just YOLO, as the old phrase used to be. And you got Alana here trying to make this change in the world with it. It's incredible. I mean, obviously there's hundreds of thousands of people that are doing the same thing, but it's fascinating to hear from somebody that was actually trying to do that. So, and now currently doing it. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I mean, maybe I
At,
was a
at
little
22, I mean,
older.
I got married at 22,
That's
right? And
young too
I mean,
for
think about
now.
it, right? And that was my first marriage. So yeah, that's very young. So to see the differences of just the lifestyle, that's just fascinating to hear just other people's backgrounds and stories with that. So going back to, okay, you're 22 years old, you're trying to make this change, and you just started coming into this shift of the indigenous people, correct? With the food and the heritage and how the food is coming together. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, so just again, this starting with this immigration project I was working on, and feeling the frustrations and the bureaucracies of the system, especially in Mexico. I ended up getting involved with an organization that was working on mental health,
Okay.
and again with the same like agricultural communities. And it was just fascinating. It was fascinating to see firsthand the realities of these people. Like they had a lot of them owned land that they were stewarding traditionally. So like the milpa, diverse crops, systems, very, very closely connected to their food. Most of them grew food in their yard and had some chickens and squash, beans, corn. And then the way that they would migrate to the US as seasonal workers to work in very industrialized agricultural systems,
Mm.
and then came back. So in parallel to that, I started hearing about this concept of regenerative agriculture in the US. and it was really interesting to me that it was sometimes being presented as this like new concept when it was what I, what I had seen that was like the default for most people in Mexico and so many other places around the world for thousands of years.
What year was this around now? I'm trying to put in perspective of people that are listening out that you're going through this change. What year in, I guess, society?
Yeah,
2010, 15?
No, this was like 2019.
This is recent. This is recent. Wow. Okay.
This was like right before COVID.
Okay.
Around that, when I was working with these rural communities in Mexico, it was right before I started working with Farmers Footprint. So that was like 2019, 2018, somewhere around that.
And that's right when, now obviously we're shifting to Farmers Footprint, but that's right when Farmers Footprint kind of started as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it all kind of expanded at that point.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the whole movement, veganism, plant-based, all of that all started happening like in a massive way around that time. It was really starting to ramp up. My wife, kids, and I, we started just eating generally plant-based in 2016. And it was like, you could just see, right, the shift, because we were only eating plant-based. So anytime we went out, we had to find something like, hey, is there what do you have a plant-based menu? Or do you have any vegan options on the menu? And then over the years around that time that you were really started seeing many more options. And the grocery store, of course, it's all processed stuff regardless, but you saw the grocery store where the plant-based section just blew up, right? I mean, California, you were in LA, is that right? Like that
in
place.
San Diego, but yeah.
In San Diego, yeah. I mean, San Diego as well. Like you see all kinds of.
I feel like in 2020, right in the pandemic, that's when it even skyrocketed again. I think it's when people started feeling like, oh shit,
yeah,
something's not working in my life right now. I actually have time because I'm home. So there's a lot of shifts that were happening, it seems.
Yeah, totally. And the some of the documentaries that came out, I mean, we were all over them, my sister and I, like Cowspiracy and all of those,
Knives.
Yeah, we all, once you watch one, all of them started to.
All of them, yeah. Yeah, we would call my sister a vegan witness because every person she met, she would just try to get them to become vegan. Like
Sam's laughing.
Sounds like Jared.
Like that's like me.
It sounds like Jared. I swear, every vegan that I met, especially during then, it's like CrossFit people. It's anyone that has like this strong passion, like you need to do this. I mean, it's like
so
Jared
you weren't vegan.
Like, you need to live intentional, people. Like
I wasn't
it's the same
vegan.
Thing.
I did try it. But I noticed that my relationship with food wasn't great when I went vegan.
That's
like
amazing.
I
was
had
the opposite.
Yeah, it's a very personal experience.
It's so personal. Well, because the reason it's so personal, I'd say even the reason that we're not 100% vegan anymore is because it was led by my wife. Honestly, she was like, I'm not getting the benefits anymore. Like all these benefits that you hear about with veganism and everything else. Like I'm starting to get that fog, and I don't feel as energized. And to me, it was like next to religion almost. Like it was, it wasn't that. It was pretty strong. It's not like a hey, choose veganism or choose your Christian or your faith or whatever. It wasn't, but it was like pretty.
You.
Yeah, but it was pretty like this because Alana, like it really changed me in a lot of positive ways. And for my wife to say that, I'm like, you're taking this away from me, right? Because she's the one who controls the food flow into the home. And yeah, sure, I could eat my own little thing and she could do hers, but that's lame. Like part of food is freaking eating with people.
It's sharing.
Gathering, sharing. And
for sure.
And that was part of her reason as well, though. That was like second next to the health. It was, she started, you saw a lot of health benefits and then she started seeing not as many. But the other thing was, it's just like, how lame was it? She gave examples. Like we were at it's not the best food, whatever, but it was a barbecue place, right? All the family was around eating barbecue, and we bought like some potatoes, for the kids. And in my head, I'm like, I'm an adult and I'm mature at this point. I'm like, dude, I don't care.
Right.
Like, I've already made a decision. Once I make a decision, nothing's gonna get in my way. And for me, everybody could be sitting there eating all this barbecue that I used to enjoy, but I'm like, I don't care. Like I made this decision. I know the benefits.
You were still
right?
in it. It's not like you were against it. Like some people don't even go into a barbecue joint because it's, they're against the eating meat. So, or animal-based products. Yeah, Jared wasn't like that, but he was able to share still in the experience with people.
Yeah, I was there. I was
is it?
sharing, and sometimes you're like, oh, you want to be able to share like in the eating as well. But I don't know why I got on this diatribe, but basically, they're the opposites. You said it didn't do anything. You didn't really see that benefit as much, right? You lost your relationship with the food.
Yeah, like I remember the portions that I had to eat to feel satisfied were like very large.
Yeah,
And I was constantly feeling hungry. Like it's not that I felt any negative effects physically, but I just noticed my relationship with food
wasn't satiating.
wasn't so healthy. I was like, looking at um yeah, and it all, around the age where I tried it too. I was probably in like high school at the time. My sister's a bit older and she was like full on and around this age too, like a lot of my friends had different types of diets, and some were more because they wanted to lose weight or around that time having such like fixation around food didn't didn't feel like nourishing as a whole in my
Yeah,
relationship with food at the time.
yeah. That's
So
such an
it was
interesting way
playing
to put it.
a mental part on you, is what
Well,
I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
it's a
more so than
fixation.
the physical one, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, fixation is a good way to look at it because and this is what's so beautiful about. We'll get to this. I don't want to jump ahead, but basically, and I've learned this. I will say this has been 2 years now since we've not been 100% plant based. I still
It's
am
been
very
2 years
largely,
already?
yeah,
Yeah, it
I'm still
has.
very
Wow.
largely plant based. I'd say, but I anyway. So the
I can
relationship
tell you
you
that the experiences that we share with food, Jared, has definitely gotten better. Because we house some wings together, man. Like you get that camaraderie, that sharing again. Like back in like when Jared was vegan, again, we're not trying to offend anybody with their choices here, people, okay? But with Jared, like I would be chowing down on some wings. And Jared, what would you be having? Like tortilla chips and salsa. Like
whatever
and
something.
like, yeah, we're sharing the experience still, but it's not the same.
No,
And
it
those of
isn't.
you that can really feel that what we're talking about, Alana, I'm sure you can attest to this. It's just different when you're all eating the same food. You're doing whatever you're doing intentionally together, as opposed to cooking separate foods. And you get this, you get that, and people already deal with this on their own dietary issues, or issues is a bad
Well,
word,
it's
their own
abuse, man.
dietary restrictions.
It's abuse of food. Wings is a perfect
Yeah,
example. Too
yeah,
many people
wings
are eating
are
too many wings, man. That's all I'm saying.
right. Yeah, they
Right?
got
Like
wing eating
it's
contest. What
I'm
the?
just that's just an example. I'm using wings as
Sure.
the sacrificial lamb here. But
Yeah,
effectively
yeah.
it's like I love wings and I'm gonna and I love whatever. Like who doesn't enjoy a good pizza,
Side note,
right?
that was
Like
also the last meat that Jared ate before he went vegan. That was the last thing that he decided to be like, you know what,
Buffalo
I'm
Wild
done.
Wings. I was sitting there eating
V
some
dubs,
buffalo.
that's right.
I was
And
like, why?
on that, because as you said, we still, even in my like most proximate family, my mom has certain dietary restrictions. Some close friends too that might be like celiac or vegetarian, or they only like or pescatarian. So something that I've loved to be able to do at home is family style meals. Like I'll just put a bunch of different options on the table and then people can pick and choose and it still brings that sentiment that we're all sharing a meal together. There's connection, there's conversation, and people can choose if they want to have meat or not, or veggies or something else. So there's definitely ways around that because as you said, sometimes we'll decide what we want to eat, and sometimes it's not really an option for a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%. It
Family
is.
style is the
So
best for sure. Think of like Italians, where every Sunday they have their family meals, or Americans, they love Thanksgiving, so that's their Thanksgiving meal. Just imagine if every day was like that. That'd be cool. If you
you
had the
could
time
hang
and
out.
ability to do that, that'd be
Yeah.
fantastic.
So you tried the vegan thing. All right. Well, you're working with indigenous communities, so obviously this was years prior because said you were about in high school when you did the vegan thing. So we're talking 5+ years later.
Yeah.
You're now working with the indigenous communities, and you come across farmers' footprint, right? Obviously, there's a big thing happening there in regenerative agriculture, and again, we're gonna get back to you felt this disconnect with food when you were 100% vegan. You're focused too much on this one thing, and it kind of removed everything else. Farmers footprint, though. We're going to put a pin in that concept of focus too much on food and how what kind of what Farmer's Footprint has kind of brought into the reality. Well, maybe we jump forward to that, because obviously that's what you're doing full time for the most part. Is that your full time?
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, let's jump into that. Like I can see the thread here, right? The common thread, obviously, food, culture. You're like, well, that's just how we always lived. What you guys are trying to promote here, and so let's talk through that a little bit and why there was an interest there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I was about 24 probably when I first found out about Farmer's Footprint. I was working with the Mexican Center of Emotional Health, still very, very closely working with indigenous communities in Mexico and seeing this like disconnect between the way that people were growing their food and what they were eating, and then the how drastic it was when they went to the US. Like the industrialized agricultural systems, their diet too, like they would eat really, really bad when they would go to the US for a season and then come back and kind of like come back to their family, to their diet, to their tradition. So I first reached out to Farmer's Footprint. I heard about it through a friend, and I asked if they would be interested in documenting one of these stories of the farmers that that kind of did this commute.
Yeah.
One of the
And
farmers that you
mhm,
were in relation with? Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And if you just real quick, you notice how it affected their mental health. It sounds like, 'cause that's what you're focused on. This way
absolutely,
of
yeah,
living and their eating, their diet probably totally affected them mentally and such, right?
absolutely.
What's a season? What do you mean by a season? Is it just like vacation, holiday, like that, or
No,
you
it's
mean
like
like an
6 months
entire
plus, right?
semester?
It's like a year or so.
Yeah, I mean, like in agriculture, and I mean, things have changed a lot, especially in the past year or so. But to have seasonal farm workers go to the US for like harvesting period and then come back to their home country has been like a very ongoing relationship
That's
between
right.
Mexico and the US, Mexico and Canada, um,
They
across
use workers, is
industries.
what I
Yeah.
understand, to come and
And a lot
Hmm.
of
harvest
it's
their fields.
legal.
Yeah,
They're
Got
legal.
it.
yeah.
They're like they're getting in there legally, which is why this gentleman probably could go back and forth,
Yep.
or he
Okay.
just
Yeah,
took a
it's a mix,
yeah. It's a mix.
there's
They
a
get
lot of
coyotes every time to
permits.
get over or something, but
So
yeah.
just, I know we're going back to that, but now it's clicking the light bulb in me. Just on that season of harvesting, while working on these farms, they still had a disconnect from their food.
Yeah,
Working on
huge.
the farms that we're all eating from.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
huge.
that's that's huge. Yeah, that's a substantial statement right there, where it's just in that small amount of time, these people that have had such a connection with food, that are harvesting our food for us to eat, were like, whoa, this is crazy. Well, maybe they didn't even notice it. Maybe you're the one who noticed it more.
Yes, it's very different than the type of agriculture that they uh, practice in Mexico. Like most industrial farms in the US are commodity crops. So you'll see this huge plantations of corn, and it's all corn, or all soy, or all wheat. And most of that produce doesn't go to food directly. Like that then
Most of
is
it's to
highly
animals.
processed,
Yeah.
goes to animals, make like all kinds of things. We have so much corn, so much more than we need, really, and it's not good quality corn. So, and that kind of gets into the bigger like systemic implications of our industrialized food system. Like we're not growing food to eat food. We're growing food to feed animals, to make other like corn syrup, fuel, you know, it's not,
Fascinating.
and that's kind of gets into this fake promise of GMOs are gonna solve the world hunger crisis. Like that's one of the biggest myths out there.
Watch Cowspiracy, and that will help you understand the sustainability issues of this type of what we're talking about. Like it's just not
Yeah.
sustainable for that. Um, if you didn't know, Americans, especially my group of people that I've talked to, they don't know where food comes from. They literally just go to the grocery market and they just eat. Oh, that's some meat. It says organic on it. I'm going to eat it. And even that, it could be complete crap, unless you truly know where your food's coming from. Um, I'd like to talk on that a little bit more. In Mexico, does that problem still exist? I know we talked a little with the
Absolutely.
tortillas and how that has come, but is that with everything in agriculture?
I mean, it's not nearly as industrialized as the US. And I think this is true to most places in the world, really. Like, the US, Australia, it's a big problem that we see in Australia that have this like extremely industrialized food systems. Whereas in places like Mexico and across Latin America, there's still a lot of, I saw this stat somewhere. It's like when we look at the amount of food that's being produced, only 30% of that is attributed to small to medium farms. 30%, which is not a lot. But when we
No.
look at the amount of food that is being consumed, that percentage goes all the way up to 70%. So it really is for the most part, medium and small farms that are currently feeding the world.
Hmm. So you find, okay, farmer's footprint. You say, can you do a documentary? Let's get back to that. So
Yeah.
yeah, good. Did they do it?
Uh, not that exact story. Not that exact story, but they did get back to me and said we are currently developing a story of an immigrant farm worker from Oaxaca turned farm owner in California. Would you be open to helping like translate this to Spanish and share it with your network? So that was kind of my initial interaction with Farmer's Footprint. So I did, and that piece is still up there on our website. It's Maria Catalan
Okay.
story, and that was kind of my first interaction with Farmer's Footprint.
Okay. And man, that must have been amazing. My gosh. That's just like that's
Yeah, because
you
they
just
came out with a documentary. Now, that documentary, it's been a little while since I've seen that specific one that was on, I believe, Netflix, right? Am I thinking of something different?
Um, well, Farmer's
it's the
Footprint has a documentary on glyphosate that's on YouTube. You might be thinking of the Kiss the Ground film.
yeah, you're
Maybe
probably thinking of Kiss the Ground.
it talked about the regeneration and the regenerative farming.
Yeah.
But I've heard
And
of
that
the
was like a
name
film.
before. Yeah, before we even had a discussion or you came into our lives here. I've heard of Farmer's Footprint, and I thought it was connected back to that one. It's
I
all
think you're
connected
referring to
somehow.
the regeneration, the beginning, that one.
It's probably.
Mm-hmm.
That's
That
probably what
is
you're thinking. And
that is a Farmer's Footprint film. That was her first
yeah,
documentary film.
I think took off. That's
Yeah, it
kind of
did.
what put them on the map, right? Were you there during that time, or was that prior to that?
I wasn't. That was so Farmer's Footprint wasn't like initially it wasn't like Zach Bush decided to create a nonprofit on regeneration and started Farmer's Footprint. It really all began through the film. Um so he was working on his clinic in Virginia, and Zach's dedicated a huge chunk of his life to research around cancer and metabolic disease and endocrinology, hospice care. And in his clinic in Virginia, which is at the bottom of the Mississippi River that crosses a lot of like the Midwest and Mid America, which is where a lot of the commodity crops that we were just talking about are, that are heavily sprayed. And glyphosate is a water soluble pesticide. So all of that travels down the Mississippi River and
Sure
ends up
does.
in Virginia. So they were seeing like cancer rates off the charts in this area where his clinic was. And that's kind of what inspired the documentary, which then after it was launched, there was so much interest and momentum around it that a group of people came together and it was like, okay, let's start a nonprofit to really like focus on this and support this movement. And that's how Farmer's Footprint started.
And they made him the spirit, like kind of the voice of it, right?
What was
They
that?
made Zach the voice of it, right? That was kind
Of the film or?
Farmer's Footprint in general.
I mean, he is our co-founder. He's chairman of our board right now. He's not super involved in our programs, really. Like he's a big ambassador for our work.
Yeah.
And we invite him in to speak at, like, to specific topics, especially at this like human and planetary health intersection. That's like so his expertise. And
Yeah.
as we've expanded into other topics like agricultural techniques or this culture piece through Nana, we've invited in different ambassadors to speak to our work as well.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, got it. I got it. So
I
he's
believe you're the voice in a lot of this stuff, correct?
I mean, I wouldn't say the voice. I'm the managing director of Farmer's Footprint, but in terms of voices, we really try to diversify the lenses in which we tell stories. So we don't, because we are a storytelling organization and we do a lot of documentary style pieces and communication. We don't want to be the only ones holding the pen.
Makes
So we
sense. Yeah.
collaborate with different writers, filmmakers, photographers, and creatives. Depending on the story that we're looking to amplify, we'll try to collaborate with a local creative that can help us bring that story to life, and then Farmer's Footprint as the amplifier of that, and we come around that piece with design support, digital marketing, storytelling, etc., to get it in front of as many people as we can.
Yeah, your website, just the website itself is super um dynamic, and it's very easy to follow, and just it's done very well. The colors, the food, the storytelling, as you say, it invites you to want to learn more and to grow.
Oh,
And
thank
so
you.
it's fantastic. So whoever did that, I just wanted to commemorate you guys on that.
probably multiple people, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
big
it's
shout out to Nick and Bjorn on the design team. They're
way to go,
incredible.
Nick. Nick and Bjorn, you said?
Yeah,
Well
yeah.
done, guys.
So
So you're
yeah,
go ahead, Drew.
good. No, I was just gonna say, we're kind of jumping ahead, but there's 4 or 5 years in between that, right? So you just have made the beginning of your career has now been in Farmer's Footprint. What was it, right? You do this translation, and let's kind of go back to that. This translation for the video, and what got you involved more full time? Because you obviously you need a job that's paying you, right, so that you can provide for yourself. You're working for was it the government organization in Mexico or some kind of
It
organization?
was a nonprofit as well, and I did work in law for a bit. So I worked in fiscal law and criminal law for a little bit,
Mm,
sometime in between. Um, but as I was saying, I didn't really think that working in agriculture was a career option for me.
yeah.
At that time you
Um,
were still like, all right, translated, but I'm still focusing on this law stuff.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Um, So I worked in law for a bit, and again, just found myself very frustrated in that space. I was also working, like, as I was studying. I don't know, part of a small family, where everyone had to like contribute to our expenses and whatnot. So I started working very young, and yeah, then eventually there was a job opening at Farmer's Footprint for, at the time, I think it was an operations manager role. And I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to be involved with the
And you
organization.
wanted to be out of the law stuff. You're like, I'm frustrated with this. My life was
Yeah.
not going in this direction, but I really feel connected to this agriculture food.
Hmm.
And it was a
Okay.
remote position, right?
It was, yeah. It was a remote position.
Heck yeah.
So I applied, and it was like a month-long process. Met with multiple members on the team, and then eventually David, who was our executive director at the time, he just got real honest with me, and he was like, "Hey, we're between you and this other person really feels like a stronger match for the operations role," which in hindsight he was so right. It was
Meanwhile, you're like, well,
definitely
dang,
not.
man, what the heck?
Yeah, it was not the role for me. But anyways, he was like, "What do you suggest? Like, what do you think you could contribute to our work?" So I made a proposal for him, and a lot of it was really anchored in um impact, like more aware. There's like, we think of farmers, but there's really like, there's farm owners, there's farm workers, there's farmers who don't own land. Like there's so many different realities within the farmer community, and they each have very specific challenges and opportunities. So it was really what I proposed to him back in the day was around like um getting more specific about which were the farmers that we were speaking to and how we could support them, and different types of farm operations, and how could we get more like specific in that way. So I made a proposal for him, and eventually ended up being hired as director of programming and impact, which was a great role for me at the time. I really, really appreciated the opportunity, and yeah, eventually I just moved to the US, even though it was a remote position. My boyfriend at the time was based in the US, and I was going there for some like in-person meetings and conferences, so it just kind of made sense.
How long were you in the States?
Like 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So while you were in the States, what shift did you feel or see with agriculture in general, or just in your life, while still being, connected with this farmer's footprint? So you're still connecting people. You're the bridge, it seems like, between these farmers and the community of farmers and footprint, and trying to expand their presence in the world, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you did the whole time for the most part? You were like researching, trying to find these farms and different agricultural methods. Is that what you were involved in?
I mean, it was mostly working with our creative team,
Mm.
working very closely with our creative team to develop this offering that we had at the time called The Nest, in which we were offering like digital marketing support for farmers. And my role there was to identify which types of farm operations could really benefit from this offering. And it went from like, okay, so considering things like, is this farmer selling direct to consumer, or are they selling wholesale? Do they have other offerings at the farm, like maybe an educational component or agrotourism? So really understanding, like, out of the people who applied, um, or other people recommended, which of them felt like they would really get the most out of this offering. And that took some learning to like get really clear on that. We got to develop some incredible websites for some really, really special farm projects, and really like we had some really successful case studies when the farmer was selling like a value added product that could be shipped.
Mm-hmm.
Then we would help them with their website, get their e-commerce set up.
Cool.
And
Would they pay you for that?
no, it was all part of the nonprofit work.
Wow.
And
Which
And this
is a
is all
tremendous
farms
thing.
that
Yeah, farmers I'm gonna put a huge generalization here. Farmers aren't looked at as sellers of digital in the digital world, right? Like here's my product. I'm gonna go to a farm stand, or I have a wholesaler already, and that's what I know of as a farmer. And I'm sure there's plenty of other Americans and people in the world that's all they know, is that they have a farmer, and why would they need a website? Why would they need any kind of shop? Um, that's a really cool feature that Farmers Footprint started. Is there anybody else out there that does this that you know of, that connects with farmers like this, or is Farmers Footprint the only, I guess, nonprofit or even profitable company?
no, there are a lot of really, really good services that are
Okay.
starting to do this. And
Yeah,
at the
because there's
same
not a lot of
time,
farms. Like, I'm sorry to interject there. They're just on the regenerative side, right? Like that's a whole nother conversation we're having. We're just talking about the general farming. Um,
but these
it,
are
it,
regenerative farmers, correct? That you
yeah,
guys were
we
working
were
with?
working with regenerative farmers.
solely regenerative farmers. Okay.
And that's another topic of conversation. We see regeneration as a journey. So, and not a destination.
Mhm.
You know, we certainly had like a baseline of like, okay, we're willing to engage if the farmer is like this far in their journey, you know, to the point where they're not spraying heavily, they're not you know, like
What if
engaging
they
in
wanted
certain
to?
practices.
Or not wanted to? What if they were like, "Hey, I wanna get into regeneration, but I don't know how." Would you you guys would be the people to connect with to get to that process or no?
Yes and no. Like, yes, to point them towards our partner. Like Farmers Footprint is a big funnel because you know, we've been able to grow our audience a bit. So sometimes when we get those farmers reaching out to us, we're able to connect them with partners that are working on that more specifically, depending on what their needs are. It's like, do you need technical assistance and advice? Do you need funding? What kind of support do you need? And then from there, we can connect them to some of our partners.
That's awesome.
So that's how you're
That's
helping them. Yeah,
incredible.
you guys aren't directly managing, holding their hand, but you're guiding them to somebody who can help them turn their farm from a conventional to more of a regenerative farm.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, that's the goal, right?
That's the goal,
That's
yeah.
the goal,
Yeah.
okay. And that was the beginning of the nest was what you
That
were
was the beginning of the nest, yeah,
yep.
which then it actually took off in the UK. So at the time, like, and we were kind of struggling to find like a good flow with that program. As you said, like farmers already have so much on their plate.
They do, yeah.
Running a farm it takes a lot of time and effort, and so sometimes it felt like on top of all of that they're already holding, asking them to develop a media presence and manage your website and all of that was a lot.
It's like, I gotta go out and
Um,
take care of my farm for 12 hours. I can't be I
yeah,
mean, I feel the burden and I live in a digital world and I'm not dealing with the farm for 12 hours. And
yeah,
yeah, it's a
exactly.
struggle just on our end.
It was a lot. But we at the time we had some team members trying to start Farmers Footprint UK, and they started iterating with some versions of the Nest offering there, and it really took off in the UK. So actually now the Nest has turned into its own nonprofit that operates for the most part in the UK, and we've kind of sunset that program in that format in the US. So we still do farmer storytelling, but we've just focused more on other programs because that one we could never really get to a flow that was sustainable both
Yeah.
for the
Specifically in
team
the
and
United States or
yeah.
okay. Is there I'm gonna go I know feels like we're probably shitting on America, but is there a buckle from your experience with Americans and wanting to be, I guess, more intentional about eating? Do you find? Separate from the Farmer's Footprint, but just from your experience with Farmer's Footprint, have you seen this buckling still, or do you see the shift where, all right, I see the positive with this.
Yes, and I mean, I think, and I was just having a conversation this morning actually that where we touched on it feels like in the US in particular there was this gap, you know, where we have a lot of people whose maybe parents or grandparents still held a lot of these like family traditions around food, a lot of the times coming from different cultures, whether it's Europe or Asia or Latin America, India, you know, this like world cuisine that is still or that was still very alive in like maybe our parents or grandparents age, more so our grandparents. And then you know, with like, and I think this was a combination of things like women being encouraged to join the workplace and the family unit as we knew it kind of going through a restructuring and like the TV meals. So there was definitely like a generation there that a lot of the relationship with food and like taking time to prepare the food and to enjoy it seems like it was lost.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot of interest in younger generations to reconnect with that. And it's challenging. I think that's where a lot of our work at Farmers Footprint has gained like a lot of momentum, especially through the Nana pillar that's more focused on food culture and how can we document these culinary traditions from around the world and share them so that we, like our generation and future generations, know like how to prepare these ingredients, when you have like more diversity and it always like farmers will grow what people are willing to purchase from them. So
Supply
I
and
think
demand, right? So if we have a demand of this intentional way of eating and this regenerative farming aspect instead of this just commercialized, like you said, we're not growing food to feed us, we're growing food to feed our food.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
not in a
exactly.
good way, like you said, the spraying and all that other stuff. And none of this is new. I mean, this stuff has been out for years. I'm happy to see that it's starting to shift. On a personal note, I'm terrible with eating. It's funny because I feel very hypocritical at times when we talk about the physical pillar and about our food choices. I joke that sometimes I won't eat for 2 days. Like for me, my body just does not crave food like a typical person's body would crave food, where I can literally go all day and be just fine. So for me, I relate to this cultural or um, this spiritual way of eating. For me, I only eat to enjoy my food, not eat for nourishment, which is a lot of times people will eat just for nourishment, and that's where they get stuck in that default way of eating. I got to eat, breakfast, lunch, dinner. They're not thinking about it. They're just trying to grab a sandwich real quick. Whereas for me, I only like eating when I can actually think about my food, enjoy the experience, enjoy the socialization if it's around people or even with myself. So it's in a way it's an intentional way of eating, but at times I very much think of it as a hypocrite to a degree because I promote this physical pillar and hey guys, be intentional with eating, be intentional with what food you eat. At the same time, I'll have some Oreos, right? So and Jared mentioned it in the beginning. What we're doing here. Anybody that's on the same ethos is it's not about perfection. It's about the
It's a journey,
progress. It's the
just like
journey.
regeneration. Yeah.
That's it. It's because honestly, once you hit that destination, most of us, it's already been shown. The philosophy is that you're bored, you're disappointed, you're depressed about. Well, this wasn't what I thought it was. So the journey is what you need to be
Mm-hmm.
happy with.
Yeah. And
Um,
I'll even like you speak about nourishment. I'd even expand that like to the so many different types of nourishment that food can bring or not just food, but anything that we let in. Like I was in Colombia with the Arhuaco community last year and they fast a lot. And when they fast, they they were saying like I'm not physically nourishing my body, but I am nourishing my body through what I am looking at, through the conversations that I'm having, and all of that is like my body is nourished by that. And I think we could.
Interesting.
I thought it was beautiful. It really
Yeah.
resonated to the nourishment that we find when we eat in community or um
So when they're intentionally fasting, which in America and I'm sure other places do it, but they have, Jared, what am I thinking of that the diet, the fasting. Intermittent fasting,
intermittent
right? So
fasting. Yeah.
it's a common expression, right? But when I say I don't eat for a day or two, I'm not 100% consistent with that. But what you're saying is these people or anybody that does this fasting, when they're intentional with fasting, they look at it as I'm not nourishing my body physically, but I'm nourishing it mentally and spiritually, depending on why I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing it.
Yeah, and this
Okay.
is true for many different religions around the world that engage in fasting in different moments. And yeah, I think we definitely eat more food than we need.
Yeah. I saw something a while back that your body is, I work in healthcare and I already kind of had this was common sense for you. Your body is a conveyor belt. If you're overloading the conveyor belt, you're going to have these just obvious problems, right? So if you're overloading it with whatever you're eating multiple times a day, maybe your specific body doesn't need to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It might only need to eat once every week. I don't know, whatever it may be. I'm exaggerating, but I think people in general just need to listen to their bodies more instead of just focusing on, oh, I got woke up, I got to have my cup of coffee, or I got to go eat my steak and eggs or whatever it might be. I think if they just listen a little bit more to the spiritual aspect, not religious aspect, but the spiritual aspect of why they're eating and what they're eating, I think that would go a long way with a lot of us. On another note, with the indigenous background, I'd like to go into a little bit with that because, we for sure, unless we grew up in a very cultural home here in America, we lose sight of the indigenous people and just the background of our food. So can you elaborate more on just what does that look like? How does somebody like me, that has no background whatsoever, some people don't even know what indigenous means, all right? And you have to go back to the basics, that there's some people
Our
out there that
mom,
don't.
she has no idea.
Heck
She's
no. Well,
still-
as mom and dad, there's no way they don't.
What does indigenous mean? It's like, all right, and then you
Uh-huh.
explain it, and they're like, anyway.
Hey, Google, what does it mean?
No, that's a great question, and I appreciate that a lot because I think it's very important in these conversations. Sometimes there's this sense that the indigenous communities are separate, from and it's not the case. It's like every human is indigenous to the earth. Like everyone, no matter where you were born, who you are, if you go back enough in your lineage, you can learn what were the indigenous practices of your lineage. For a lot of people in the US, that might take them back to some Celtic traditions, Irish traditions. It depends, but there's like colonization didn't just happen in the Americas and
Right.
Africa, like it happened in Europe too. And there's indigenous practices and traditions that each of us can trace our way back to. So I think that's a very important piece of the conversation for these like explorations around indigeneity to be relevant to everyone. And now when we talk about native communities, that's different. Like we're all indigenous to the earth, but we're not all natives to everywhere. Like there's so for example, when I was living in San Diego area, like I'm indigenous from Mexico, but the native indigenous tribe there was the Kumeyaay tribe. So those are the native tribes are the people who were original from that place. So when we travel somewhere else, that is the relationship or the curiosity that will serve best that particular place, because the native peoples are the ones that know like how to live in relationship with that particular ecosystem. Like what does the land look like? How do they grow food? How do they eat too? How do they live in harmony with that place? So when we go somewhere else, I think acknowledging who the native indigenous communities are from those specific territories and what can we learn from them when we go to a specific place could do a lot for us too, because they don't see themselves as separate from the land or the territory.
No.
They really see themselves as an extension of that.
So that's Native Americans here, right?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
going to
even
Native
then, like you
Americans.
said, there's individual tribes in that particular state or,
even
land.
within a city,
Yeah.
like she was saying,
So-
it's very specific to that particular region.
So how does one find this, right? If I wanted to know native people in Pennsylvania, if there are any, how do I go searching for that? Is it a simple Google search or?
Well, and what benefit
gotta-
would that bring? I mean, I'm very practical. Like we're having this conversation, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
let's talk practical here, right?
Yeah, the
It's like
benefit of it. Yeah.
understanding. Yeah, you can shake hands and learn from this person and how they did stuff, but like, let's get to like why people would really care about that besides just knowing a good story. Like,
Right.
why
That's
does it
true.
really
Yeah.
matter? That's the question.
Mhm.
So maybe Sam's first question is like, hey, good ways to find people like this. And if it's just Googling and that's the best answer, that's fine. But then the other one is like, I want the practical. I want to understand how many of these, like these are good conversations to have and we need to have more of them. But we need to start doing stuff like to really make an impact. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Oak Road Diaries. We really appreciate you, and we really, really do hope that it added even the tiniest bit of value to your life.
If you felt that the conversation resonated with you, we invite you to share it, because you really never know who needs to hear this today.
You can find more tools for intentional living and the 7 pillars of transformation at thehappyatrium.com, or connect with us on our socials at thehappyatrium. We'd love to see and interact with you there.
Until next time, keep tending to your inner child, one breath, one step, and one story at a time.
Take care, and we'll see you down the road.